I've been playing Genshin Impact for almost 4 years now, and I can confidently say that characters have been my favorite part of the game. If you've ever wondered how Genshin attained all its popularity, you can credit the characters. From simple designs, to gameplay, to story, basically everything was done flawlessly with their characters. Or at least most of them. It's also kind of backfired on Hoyoverse since a lot of people get way too obsessed with their favorite characters, and you also get these types of people. Of course, I'm no exception when it comes to weird Genshin fans, but instead of shipping characters, I am pitting them against each other in basketball. I've had Genshin basketball on my channel for well over 5 months now, but I think it's time for me to open up a new type of debate. Instead of drafting starting fives or comparing them to LeBron James, I had professionals debate the topic of Tevat's greatest player of all time. And by professionals, I mean a Filipino and a Californian sitting in a Discord call with Tiermaker. To put into perspective the skills of each Genshin character, we have created a pyramid split into 5 tiers, with the higher you go being the better you are at basketball. We also took into factor intangibles such as mental fortitude, injury prominence, and basically everything that would affect a real basketball career. And with all the preliminary info out of the way, it's time to open up the discussion, starting with tier 5, the role players.
Pray for me, God's gotta play for me. Me and him are not standing adjacently, thirsty for the clout, talking too brazenly. Bullet hit his mouth, at least he died tastefully.
Role players are categorized as players that have one specific job to do on a team. Majority are either there to play defense or shoot threes, but others are rookies or even just players developing their skills. Some examples of role players in the NBA are Jaden McDaniels, Rui Hachimura, and PJ Washington. Players that aren't necessarily bad but are expendable are usually the ones that end up in this category. So in terms of Genshin Impact basketball, who is in this tier? There's a total of 36 characters. This includes the multiple child characters like Chi-Chi, Nahida, Kachina, Sayu, Yao Yao, and Siegeween, along with a lot of primarily inside scorers. We'll go over some of the somewhat questionable choices, such as Hu Tao. Some may argue that she should be way higher than this, but I heavily disagree. In terms of height, she is on the lower side of the spectrum, and her scoring capabilities are limited. While it's true that she can score inside effectively, she can't space the floor, which is what keeps her all the way down here. Say someone tall like Risley is sitting in the paint. Hu Tao would have to pull off the coldest layups ever or chuck up a mid-range, which I don't see her doing much. And even if she could score, her defense is a major liability. Not only is she an undersized guard, but she could also not keep up with a majority of the higher tiered guards. Most characters are already taller than her, and they would also have way more physical strength than her. For these reasons, she's held back in the role player tier. In the same light, that's why characters like Heizo are in this tier. It's way too risky to have inside scorers that can't defend. So why are people like Tignari also in this tier? He specifically seems like an all-star level player. Not only is he a shooter, but he also has good leadership skills. And the reason for that is because he really isn't the main option for an offense. Characters in the higher tiers have the capabilities to call up and handle an entire play by themselves, but Tignari is more of like a Chris Paul on the Lakers type of player. Yes, Chris Paul was a big reason why the Lakers won in 2020, but he wasn't the full reason. Role players can be important to a team without necessarily being the franchise player, which is what I see Tignari as. If you put him next to a superstar center, he could help win a ring, but he isn't the type to carry a team and get finals MVP. And that's the same argument for other characters like Kokomi, Naida, and Kole. Otherwise, some other players are just bums. Think like Sucrose, Farina, Bennett, and Baiju. This guy specifically would probably be injured half the time anyway and sit out a whole season like Ben Simmons. So that should clear out all of the reasonings for characters in the role player tier. Let's now move on to All-Stars.
Like I just met her, she told me she love me. Like, she just want money and dick.
All-Star players are usually what you want to have when building a championship roster. Although they aren't necessarily the franchise-defining players, they're usually the second option or just a really good player. Some All-Star level players in the NBA are Drew Holiday, Jalen Williams, Zach LaVine, and Brandon Ingram. Now, in terms of Genshin Impact, there's quite a few, 22 to be exact. So let's get into the questionable decisions. Kaya, Kujosara, Rosaria, and Tartaglia could have an argument to be a tier higher, but it really doesn't make sense if you think more about it. They may be tall and skilled on both ends of the floor, but they aren't the archetype that would take over an entire game. For example, Zach LaVine is an all-star level player who is dropping 30 points per game in his last 10 on 50% shooting and 45% from 3. Sure, he could command the entire offense, but it isn't enough to win them games. Why? Because every other team above them has a player that's better. All-stars aren't bad players, they just aren't on the same level as other dudes. Try and tell me that Zach LaVine in the last 10 games is on the same level as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just because they both drop 30 points per game. And remember, this is just Zach having a really good stretch compared to Shay's full season of scoring. The reason these four are here is because although they have the skill set, they just aren't what you want to build an entire franchise around. Kaya lacks spacing capabilities, Tartaglia is a sloppy shooter, Rosaria has personality issues, and Cujo is the perfect definition of a second option. And as for all the others, the main reason is either height, lack of shooting, or just not being enough of a dog. That includes Venti. This guy fell off, by the way. I don't care what you all think. Now, a lot of these placements may seem controversial, but trust me, because it makes a lot more sense when we go into the higher tiers. Namely, franchise players. The superstars.
Tell you what, you're back to
When creating a championship roster, you need the main player to build around. Superstars are players that dominated in their time but either didn't cement themselves as an all-time great or were just held back by external factors. Players like Derrick Rose, Paul Pierce, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony. As you can see, we classified most superstars as great players that either never won a ring or shat themselves in the middle of a game. And if we take a look at the list, there's already a lot to be questioned. For one, you can make the argument that Arlecchino could be higher, but I don't really see that. While yes, we literally didn't even beat her in the story quest, she doesn't show any qualities that prove her ability to shoot a three-pointer. I see her as a mid-range shooter like DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan was a good-ass player and carried the Poverty Raptors for quite a while in the 2010s, but there are literally zero mid-range dominant players that won a ring, so I feel like the same logic would apply to Arlecchino. On the other hand, you could also say that maybe Aether in his prime should be higher, but this guy literally gets his ass put on a mixtape by half of the people he fights. Also, he can only use his right hand, so he's literally just Jaylen Brown. And don't even try to tell me this guy's an all-time player. And just in case any red flag ass motherfuckers are watching this video, no. Wanderer is undersized and if anything should be ranked lower. The only reason he's up here is that he could probably shoot, but he's really just Trae Young. But it doesn't matter anyway, since it's time to move on and take a look at the upper echelon of basketball players. The all-time greats. All-time players like Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Durant, and Julius Erving are players that could define an entire era. Not only did they dominate in their time, but they also proved their ability to win. What separates an all-time great from a regular superstar is that you could put these dudes in any era and they would still likely dominate. Please tell me a player from the 90s that is stopping a Kevin Durant pull-up or a current day player that could stop Prime Shaq in the paint. In the same light, I see each Genshin character in this tier to be a player that could hold their own against any team you pit them up against. We have Mavuika and Raiden as our resident Archons, a few shooters, and extremely dominant inside scorers. These two are also the ones that I have teetering over the edge of becoming a GOAT level player. For one, Mavuika literally pieced up the Abyss with one attack, which is the equivalent to McGrady scoring 13 in 33 seconds. She also is literally the strongest person in all of Natlan and cooked the shit out of Capitano. Her skills would translate easily into basketball and she would definitely have a Tim Duncan type of career. Raiden on the other hand has the better argument to become the GOAT. Keep in mind that the Raiden in-game is not even in her prime anymore. The Shogun in her prime would have definitely been a dominant force in the paint as well as a great on-ball defender. The only thing stopping these two from becoming the greatest of all time is their shooting. And if Raiden and Mavuika can't shoot, then we don't see them as the greatest. Since if you want to be the best of the best, then you have to be better at literally everything. But no more talking, because it's time to finally reveal the 3 greatest players in all of Genshin basketball. Introducing the GOATs.
Last name ever, first name greatest. Like a sprained ankle, boy, ain't nothing to play with. Started off local, but thanks to all the haters, I know G4 pilots on a first name basis.
Zhongli, LeBron James, Clarand, Kobe Bryant, Neuvillette, Michael Jordan. In terms of relativity, these are the greatest to ever touch the court. Zhongli has a crazy level of longevity, being a heavy hitter for 6,000 years. Neuvillette is also in the same category, having lived between 500 to 2,000 years. So why is Clarand here? I'll get to that in a bit. Let me just glaze the other two real quick. Zhongli's ultimate is literally him dunking a basketball on his enemies. He has seen the rise and fall of basketball greats, experienced every dynasty in history, and still manages to be at the top of the game. Neuvillette is a stretch 5 and he is one of a kind. There's barely any tall characters and even less that can sink a 3-pointer. He's basically Kevin Durant if KD chose to play center and also had maximum aura. Now let's address the elephant in the room. First of all, Clarand immediately solos all of the human characters. Being an undefeated duel master, she would know how to work around any opponent in front of her and would basically be the greatest isolation player of all time. And as for all the god characters, how many many of them could shoot from 40 feet out while still being slippery around the basket. In terms of skill, Clorant is above everyone else. The Archons have the physical gifts, and a lot of characters are just talented in general. Clorant, on the other hand, is at the top of her game through sheer grit and grind, and that's why I see her as one of the greatest of all time. You can't convince me otherwise. I have Kobe ranked 3rd all time for the same reason.
I mean, sure should be cool on offense, but like, what's she gonna do on defense? Like, what's she gonna do? Read the minds, and as soon as like, let's just say like a 7-foot guy is going down on top of the key, what's she gonna do? Jump up for it?
Well, he's a wolf.
He was raised by dogs.
He was raised by wolves, like literally. So whenever there's a game, the commentators are gonna be asking, why are there 4 players and a dog on the court?
Oh my longevity. You gotta think about it. Hold on. I just thought about it. Longevity must have a lot of rings considering he has been here for how long. Seen dynasties, knows how to take them down. I feel like we got our GOAT here, honestly. Our first GOAT case.
I don't even know why she's the leader.
Only time she pulled up was to spawn bubbles in like the one fight. Is this guy even gonna show up to the game?
He's the Make-A-Wish kid that's like Laker for a day. Arlecchino would be a crazy ass lasher, but like no shooting.
No shooting is just really like a big hindrance in today's game. So like, right there. And then this is just, what the fuck?
And there you have the Genshin basketball GOAT pyramid. Of course, I was just scratching the surface of our placements, so there's a lot of information left out, mainly because I don't want to talk about Genshin basketball for 20 fucking minutes straight. And as usual, it's not my problem if your favorite character is a bum on the court. Of course, this video is just for entertainment purposes, and there is basically zero basis for half of the arguments other than just sheer ball knowledge. Nevertheless, this video was pretty fun to make, so feel free to call my opinion shitty in the comment section down below. I would love to hear people give arguments as to why Arlecchino should be the GOAT. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. And if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing. And until next time.